I think I'm going to call that little bit of chaotic guitar work there the Ugly Duckling Swamp Blues. Kind of appropriate, a little manic, a little dissonant there. In any case, at this stage of the pullback, we've come down about 8% on the NASDAQ 100, which is really where the selling has been centered. Of course, we've been seeing mini bear markets in other areas of the market, like the FOMO side of the market, which includes stuff like electric vehicles and the electric vehicle batteries and other stuff. That was hot to trot, space stocks as well, earlier in the year, and has since blown up. And in the process created a lot of long-term investors. So now we're in a position where you've come down pretty nicely, and you had one leg down off the peak, and then you get a second little leg down that occurred last week, okay? And, you know, the reality is if you get 30, 40% out of 2, 3, 4 days on the short side, that's pretty good. And you sort of have to take it within context of this market because it tends to be volatile and it'll whip back the other way very quickly. So the market's going to give you what the market's going to give you, not what you think you're going to take out of it, okay? So getting a little bit too piggy at the wrong time is not recommended. And of course, a lot of people want to keep getting short. It's kind of interesting because when we start coming off the peak, everybody wants to buy undercut and rally moves, all of which fail. And that's more typical of how undercut and rally moves used to work in the past, when I was using them as cover points and then shorting into the subsequent rallies. And if you go to my Twitter page, you'll see the examples of Mara, Marathon Patent Group, and Riot Blockchain. Both of those are Bitcoin miners. They had undercut and rally moves maybe a couple weeks ago, and then they rolled over again to lower lows this past week, and so you can see how those are working. So, but let's just say we're looking for ugly duckling stuff. You know, how do I go about doing that? Well, first of all, I have my list of FOMO stuff, and that might be the first place to look. So if I go through these, and we'll just go through all of these, you can see that something like Arcimoto, it's been beaten to a pulp, and you're starting to get these big fat bingo bars. These are oversold indicators, these gray bars, these dark gray bars, and you're starting to pick up a little bit of color in here, but I don't really like the way the indicator bars up at the top, the Bongo Weekly, the Bongo Daily, the Force 13 and Force 2, and also in the middle here, you can't really see the label. Kahuna's up and down, there are none. Okay, so let's just go through the list. Canoe, nothing there. Desktop Metal, possibly. You're seeing a little bit better color in here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 thin oversold bars, and you're getting these last three as it's sort of flattening out along the lows. There's potential for this to bounce, okay? So you might put it on your list as something to possibly trade off the lows. Fisker, they're going to report earnings this week. I think it's either Monday morning or Tuesday morning, I forget, or Tuesday afternoon or Monday afternoon. I don't know, one of those days. You can double check on that yourself. It says here 517, and probably what I should be using here is an end of day chart. There we go. And you can see earnings due 517, that would be tomorrow. So probably tomorrow, either in the morning or after the close, you can check that. Lordstown Motors, nothing really going on there. Metro Mile, nothing really going on there. You notice there are three distinct bingo bars showing up now. Okay, so you have one wave down. Yeah, you might actually say, yeah, that's one wave down, two waves down, and the third wave down. So you got three waves down. You've got three sets of bingo bars, and you have big volume move here, but the bars up here aren't doing anything. That could be good for a bounce, so you might want to jot that one down. Riot Blockchain, of course, these are all the way down to the 200-day line. And you can see back here, let's pull up my crosshairs. Here we go. You can see back here, that would have been, I guess that was almost almost 4 weeks ago, 3 to 4 weeks ago. You had this undercut and rally move here, but it didn't go anywhere. It ran into the 20-day line, it rolled over. That's the way undercut and rally moves used to work in the past. So, you know, maybe it's going to try and bounce here. You could possibly get a trade out of it. But I'm not so sure that this is going to result in all of these coming back to life and rocketing to new highs. Here's Futu Holdings. Again, an example of extreme strength that immediately gives way. So you had this big pocket pivot on nice volume, and the very next day it blows up. And then you get an undercut and rally move in here. So you rally back above this low here. And that's basically, so you can see it clearly. Okay, so you have a low here, say, and you come down, you bounce off the 65-day exponential, you rally back above this low. I don't know about my line there, not very straight, but you get the idea. So you rally back above, but then you just roll over at the 50-day line, you go lower. That's how undercut and rally moves used to work in the past. But now you're coming down in here. I think maybe if you got close to the 200-day line, you might get a better bounce, but you are trying to do something here. Let's take a look. Let me get rid of this pan. You didn't quite. Let's see what the lows here are. So you have a low of 99.84, and you've got a low here of 113. So not quite. And you're getting a little bit of a bounce, a little bit of color in here, but not really what I want to see. Let's go. Let's see. Push down a little more down to Snowflake. There we go. Snowflake trying to turn. Does anybody remember Kramer babbling about how this thing was undervalued at about 350? Shows how much he knows. Don't listen to any people on financial cable TV. Maybe the only guy you could listen to is Gary Kaltbaum, probably the only one who knows what he's talking about on cable financial TV. But what you're going to notice is you got a big couple of bingo bars here. Now you got 3 oversold bingo bars. And as I've talked about in the past, usually what I look for are 3 oversold bingo bars or 3 separate clusters of bingo bars. It's not a hard and fast rule, but if you can combine it with some other things on the chart, then you might be able to figure out where a turn could occur, and also, whether you'll get a swing trade out of it or not is not really determined at that point. All you can do is get long and then see where it goes. Now maybe it just rallies up into the 50-day line, but you can see you got some nice color. You already had a blue kahuna right there, and you got another one here. Okay, so this is turning a little bit nicer. You've seen some colors. That's what the gold miners like to say when they have a pan full of sand and they see some gold in it. You see some colors, so it's kind of what you're seeing here. You want to see some color in here, and that's blue color. And you get a big bottom fishing type of pocket pivot here, but there's no moving average here, so it's kind of out of play. Maybe the 10-day line is about it, but you can see what's happening here. So this gives you an example of things to look at. Here's C3. That's a possibility too, because you're flattening here, flattening out along the lows. You've got earnings on June 2nd, and a little bit of color, but nothing huge. So my point simply is that you may be able to pick off some bounces here, and we'll see how this all plays out. But fuel cell energy, you got 2 distinct clusters. This big one can stand as one cluster. It is a cluster. And you got 3 thinner ones here, the bingo bars, and a little bit of color there. So that looks interesting. Silvergate is another Bitcoin miner, I think. One big bingo bar trying to turn. I'm not so sure. Maybe you did get a little undercut and rally in here. Yeah, you did. So you have a low here at 89.30. And you close Friday at 93.29, possibly. And it could be good for, because it's so beaten down, it could be good for at least a trade maybe to the 20-day, the 65-day, the 50-day. And this kind of stuff is for swing traders. It's not for trend followers, because I don't think you're going to develop any kind of serious trend in this market. Now watch it go prove me wrong, but that's what it looks like right now. If it changes, that's fine. I can adapt very quickly. And we also have the blog page and the video reports where I can keep everyone updated on what I'm seeing. MicroStrategy doesn't really thrill me. Tesla, will it bounce off the 200-day line? Well, you have a shakeout on Thursday at the 200-day line. Could bounce. Virgin Galactic, you have 3 separate bingo bars here as you're coming down. No real color up here, but possibly could turn simply because it's so oversold. Beyond Meat doesn't really thrill me. Corsair Gaming doesn't really thrill me. It's showing a little bit of color in here. It's not as beaten down. It's been flatlining for a long time. Nikola doesn't really thrill me. All of the colors look pretty good. 3D Systems maybe a little better. You're getting some better color in here. And you do have this big bottom fishing Bible gap up. So it could rally back. I mean, you got to think about this. This thing's given up like 70-80% of its gains off the peak, right? So, in fact, there's a way to measure this very quickly using HS Investor. So from here to here, essentially 69.7% off the peak. So that's a pretty good shellacking. And now it's trying to turn, and maybe it will bounce. So don't discount this. It could potentially bounce here, and you get a nice little pullback after that bottom fishing Bible gap up on Tuesday. And it holds at the low of this day here, so it holds it on Thursday, and now you're pushing up off of there. So this could potentially turn and be good for at least a trade. So you want to be open to some of these, and I think this is really where you're seeing any real trade potential right now. I don't see anything else that's getting me all that excited. Ballard Power, another, you see three distinct areas of bingo bar activity. So possibly here, but that doesn't thrill me so much. Fastly doesn't really thrill me. Stratasys, this is another 3D printer. Maybe this one will turn, you know, because 3D is. So watch the group. You've got 3D, you got Stratasys, and you have Desktop Metal, which I looked at back here, which also looks like it might be turning. So another thing to do is if you're looking at beaten down stuff, look at groups or stocks that have common thematics to them, common themes, and see if those are lining up together as well. So that's another thing you want to do. But I think maybe it's possible the 3D printers could turn. I mean, they're talking about, I was reading an article the other day that, you know, forget lumber. Who needs lumber? Just 3D print your own house. And maybe in the future people will 3D print their own houses. I know you can 3D print your own guns, and they work pretty well. So anyways. Live-in, you're going to see some of these guys starting to report. I think LAC reports in the middle of the week, but I don't really like the way this looks. Here's one beaten down pretty good off the 200-day line. MP Materials is a rare earth metals play, and again, I like to look at what the other names in the group are doing. Tronox is acting pretty well, so potentially maybe this makes a little bit of a comeback because you're way down in undercut and rally land. You got these lows over here on the left side. You've got this low right here. You haven't pushed above them, but you have shaken out at the 200-day line. So, you know, you can put together a good list, I think, of 5 to 10 names from this video report, what I'm going through in these FOMO names, and it's possible you could pick off some good trades. But again, as I said, I think this is a market mostly for nimble swing traders and not for trend following investor types. So we'll continue this. Workhorse doesn't really thrill me, but, you know, could be set up for a bounce. Yalla Group, possibly as well, you know, could be setting up here. You have this, I think that's just a 5-day pocket pivot. I think it missed a regular pocket pivot by, 1 day. But still, you know, you got a couple of pocket pivot volume signatures in here. It's backing up a little bit. You are sort of in undercut and rally land. You know, and now, you know, everybody wants to get short. So that's one of the gauges. Another one of the gauges I look at. Does everybody want to get short all of a sudden? I haven't checked the sales of my short selling book, but I probably should do that. And that will spike, and everybody wants to get short. And it's usually at least good for an intermediate bounce in the market that goes farther than most people think. And I would not discount the possibility that the current bounce could just take everything back up to the highs because the S&P 500 is practically there already. Palantir, here's another one. This is another one of Arc Lady's favorites along with the 3D printers. And she's been dead wrong, you know, and in my view, that just sort of points out her incompetency and how little she really knows about stocks. But that doesn't mean that some of her favorite holdings aren't going to bounce here because they've been beaten to a pulp. And I'm frankly quite open to playing them on the long side if they want to turn. So Palantir, you have this big reversal, outside reversal off the lows, and hanging tight in here, and you get a pullback for 2 days. Okay, that looks normal, and the volume dries up, and now you turn back up. You're getting some nice color up here, so that looks kind of interesting. And I bet you guys were thinking I was going to talk about the short side in my video report this weekend. Maybe not. Here's QuantumScape. Now this is getting some bingo bars down in here. No real color in here, but you know, you are setting up in here for a possible undercut and rally. And again, these could carry up, and you can look back and see other reaction rallies. You know, you get some pretty good movement. So you could get a move to the 20-day or maybe as high as a 50-day. I'm not saying that you're going to, but you could. So like I said, you can pick, I think, maybe 5 names out of this presentation and maybe have some interesting stocks to look at for potential ugly duckling plays, if that's how the market plays out. If we roll over again tomorrow, that's a different story. And it's about mid-morning Sunday, so I don't know what the futures are doing. Now let's look at Unity Software. Now this is actually a pretty good name as far as a company in terms of their business. You might want to look into that. And so you are in undercut and rally land here where you have this low at 86. You have, I'm going to say that this is one distinct grouping of bingo bars. This is a second one, and this is a third one, and it's the fattest one of them all. And you got some color up here, and you're trying to turn. But you can see here, you know, you're undercutting this low and you've rallied just above it. So technically you could play that as an undercut and rally. So, and again, as I said, you know, people were getting all UNR happy, as I was putting it, when we were starting to come down last week. You know, every little undercut and rally, everybody wants to buy. You know, oh, well, UNR here, UNR there, UNR here, UNR there. So they get under UNR drunk, I'm going to say. But there comes a time when they can start to work, and that's usually when everybody wants to go short and the market has corrected a decent amount, which it has done. So again, I'm not bullish, I'm not bearish. I'm just assessing the real-time data as it comes in, and I'm trying to remain objective. That's all you can do in this market, and that's all you should do, you know. I've been talking about cryptocurrencies on my Twitter page for a while, and you always get the guys who got to come in with their opinions. You know, oh, well, this is, see you at 100,000, or I'm going to buy it now as soon as it finishes its correction, or this correction is going to result in a huge move to that. It's like, that's all BS. It's just opinions. It's bravado. And you notice it's always men doing that. Okay, when I was a broker, the men were always the most incorrigible egos you ever ran into, whereas the women were always open to new information, and they kind of viewed my relationship with them as being one of a team working together. And so you see this sort of bravado among the men, and it generally, you know, occurs too early, and they're getting they want to buy things too early, and once they all get beaten to a pulp, that's the time when maybe the undercut and rallies do start to work. I think that was my point with all that. But anyways, let's just whip through some more. So this is an interesting one, so you can jot that one down. EOS I don't really like this one. Airbnb, this is a possibility because you are getting a reopening. So if we look at this, let's look at it from this perspective. A little too big. You're all the way back to where it started in the IPO. There's the IPO right there. Okay, so you actually just, the low of the IPO day, you rallied just above. You could also pick off this low, you've rallied just above. So you do have potential deep undercut and rally, similar to what Roku did a couple of years ago. If you guys go back and I think go look at my January and February reports of 2018 or 2019, I forget. But yeah, that could move. Blink coming off the 200-day line, that's a possibility. No undercut and rally in here yet, but you can watch this. You're getting a little bit of color, but nothing really that thrills me terribly. But you can see we've already got some decent candidates here. Fubo TV, this one might be interesting because you do have an active undercut and rally that's actually holding. You had a pullback on Thursday and it held. And you can see that you're getting some very nice color in here and you're hanging along the 10-day and the 20-day. So this might be a possibility along the 10-day and the 20-day. So you want to watch that. And you have a bottom fishing pocket pivot here. Then you have a bottom fishing viable gap up that kind of fails. Okay, I can accept that, but it is holding in tight and trying to set up. So this color looks pretty good. So that's on my list as something to watch. DraftKings does not necessarily thrill me, although it is so far down there. It could try and rally from here. You do have a little undercut and rally through this low at 44.10 to look at. Lithium Americas, they're going to report this week. Is it right? Maybe I'm wrong on this. I have it down on my list, so I'll have to double check that. But this one's kind of flattening out too. No real color in there. Marathon, this is another one. It could be bouncing off the 200-day line. I'm just going to pop through these. Lee Auto, notice you've got 3 distinct bingo bar clusters. You're getting some color in here. You have a potential UNR at this low here, which is 1854. Closed Friday at 1835. Piedmont Lithium, this has been the strongest lithium name. Possible you could pick off an undercut and rally in here. It hasn't broken down that much. Xpeng, got a big bingo bar in here. You're trying to undercut and rally through this low. Okay, so you have a 25.27 low and you close Friday at 25.70. This one could turn. You're getting a little color here, not as much as I'd like to see. But that's essentially my FOMO index list, okay? And that's where I'm going to look first for undercut and rally moves that are deep, deep down in the patterns, that are starting to show some color on my indicator bars along the tops of my chart. And I'm going to, one of the best ones I think in here in that regard is Fubo. That has some pretty good color in here. Just to review real quickly, I think Triple D has some pretty good color in here. Let's take a look at the other one. Desktop Metal has some pretty good color in here. And I think also Unity Software has some pretty good color in here. Well, no, I take that back. I'm trying to remember which one it's. You can go through the lists again and go through this video again and get an idea of what looks good. But you got some ideas here in Ugly Duckling land, and I think that's kind of what you want to be looking at now, because we already know what all the weak stocks are and where rallies might take them to, where they might become shortable again at some point. We'll just have to see how things play out. But what I wanted to do here is give you an ugly duckling view of the market, an objective ugly duckling view of the market, so that you have something in your back pocket that is not all bearish all the time. And I think at this stage you could be in for a bounce. You could just turn around and make new highs again. Anything can happen. Assume nothing.